Hi everyone. This is how you doing? Eastview Husky Pups. It's our last week of videos, and for reading this week, we are reviewing how to retell a fiction story in a big boy and girl way. So when you first started second grade, most of you would retell stories, and you would read a story, and then you would tell us everything that happened in the story. But this year we've learned how to tell it like a big boy and a big girl, like a grown-up. We use something called a summary. It's a quick way of retelling a story, and we really get to just the really important things that the story has: main character, problem, important events, solution, and then we tell the lesson that was learned in the story. It's a quick way of retelling a story. Instead of telling every single little thing, we focus on those important points. And the strategy that we use to help us remember how to summarize or how to retell in a quick way is someone wanted, but then so. I'm going to pull that up right now for you. So whenever we have to give a summary, that's the noun. Whenever we have to summarize, that's the verb. We think and we say, someone wanted, but then so. Now, when we say it, we don't say the someone, we fill it in with the character's name. But that's the strategy we use to summarize. So whenever we're done, we're going to say, done reading a book, we say, blah, 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 wanted, blah, 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 but, and then we tell the problem. Then we tell what the character does to try to figure out the problem, and so what finally solves the problem. Okay, so I'm going to read a story to you today, and then we are going to work together to summarize it using our someone wanted but then so strategy. Today I am going to read to you The Old Woman Who Named Things by Cynthia Rylant and illustrated by Catherine Brown. Once there was an old woman who loved to name things. She named the old car she drove Betsy. She named the old chair she sat in Fred. She named the old bed she slept on Roxanne. And she named her old house Franklin. Every morning she would get out of Roxanne, have a cup of cocoa and Fred, lock up Franklin, and drive off to the post office and Betsy. She always hoped for a letter from someone, but all she ever got was bills. The reason the old woman never got any letters was because she had outlived every single one of her friends. This worried her. She didn't like the idea of being a lonely old woman without any friends, without anyone whom she could call by name. So she began to name things, but she named only those things she knew she could outlive. Her car Betsy had more get up and go than anything around. Her chair Fred had never sagged a day in his life. Not one creak or moan had she ever heard out of her old bed, Roxanne. The old woman never worried about outliving any of them, and her days were very happy. One day, when the old woman was out soaping some mud off Betsy, telling her that Franklin wouldn't want to be seen with a car that didn't keep its bumpers a little cleaner, a shy brown puppy came to the old woman's gate. The old woman had not named the gate because two of its hinges had rusted off, and she could tell the gate wasn't long for this world. The shy brown puppy wagged its tail. It looked a little hungry. The old woman stood beside Betsy and watched the puppy for a while. She said. Then she walked into Franklin, got a chunk of ham from her refrigerator, and came back outside. The old woman gave the ham to the hungry puppy and told it to go home. She told it that Betsy always made puppies sick, and Fred never allowed puppies to sit on him, and Roxanne wasn't wide enough for a puppy and an old woman to fit on. And besides all this, Franklin couldn't tolerate dog hair.
So the puppy went away. But the next day, the puppy was back. The old woman was sitting in Fred reading a book on everlasting flowers when she saw the puppy through her window. Go home, she called to the puppy. The puppy wagged its tail when it saw her. Go home, she called again. But the puppy just kept wagging. The old woman noticed that it still looked a little hungry, so she went to her refrigerator. She gave the puppy a hunk of cheese and 2 biscuits. Then she told it to go home. The puppy went away. That night, as the old woman plumped up the pillows on Roxanne, she thought about the puppy. It was a very nice puppy, she thought. It was a very pretty puppy, she thought. But it couldn't stay. If it stayed, she would have to give it a name, and it could never last as long as Franklin, Fred, or Betsy, or Roxanne. She might outlive it, and she didn't want to risk that. She didn't want to outlive any more friends. She would just keep telling it to go home. Every day, the brown puppy came to the old woman's gate. Every day she fed it and told it to go home. Always it went away, and always it came back the next day. This went on for many months. The puppy got bigger and bigger until soon it wasn't a puppy anymore. It was a dog. And it was still a dog with no name. And all this time, the old woman had gotten a new dresser that she had named Bill, a new wheelbarrow that she had named Francine, and a new concrete pig for her garden that she had named Bud. But the dog she faithfully fed at her gate every day still had no name. Since it had no name, the old woman didn't have to worry about outliving it. She thought herself pretty clever in this. Then, one day, the shy brown dog did not come to the old woman's house. She sat and fed and watched the gate all day long, but the dog never came. The old woman felt sad. The next day again, the dog did not come. The old woman drove Betsy around town looking for the dog, but she did not find it. The old woman felt even sadder. The following day, when still the dog did not come, the old woman knew she had to do something. She picked up her telephone and called the dog catcher. Have you caught any shy brown dogs? The old woman asked the dog catcher. We got a whole kennel full of shy brown dogs, ma'am, said the dog catcher. Was yours wearing a collar with its name on it? No, said the old woman sadly, and she hung up the telephone. The old woman sat and thought about the shy brown dog who had no collar with a name. Wherever it was, no one would know that it was supposed to come to the old woman's gate every day, that she was supposed to feed it and tell it to go home every day, that things were always supposed to be this way. The shy brown dog had no collar and no name, and no one would ever be able to know these things about it. The old woman made a decision. She locked up Franklin and drove Betsy to the dog catcher's kennel. She said to the dog catcher, I've come to find my dog. He asked her what color it was. It's brown, she said. He asked her how old it was. About a year old, she said. Then he asked her what its name was. The old woman thought a moment. She thought of all the old, dear friends with names whom she had outlived. She saw their smiling faces and remembered their lovely names. Then she thought how lucky she had been to have known these friends. She thought what a lucky old woman she was. My dog's name is Lucky, she told the dog catcher. He led her to a big yard full of white dogs and black dogs and brown dogs. The old woman looked and looked and looked, and finally she saw her own shy brown dog sitting beside a gate. The dog was looking at Betsy, parked in the driveway. The old woman called out, Here, Lucky! And at the sound of her voice, the shy brown dog came running. From that day on, Lucky lived with the old woman, and he always came when his name was called. It turned out that Betsy didn't make all dogs sick, and Fred was happy to allow a dog to sit on him, and Franklin really didn't mind a little dog hair. And even Roxanne was sure to make herself plenty wide enough for a shy brown, lucky dog and the old woman who named him.
Okay, so now that we're at the end of second grade, we should be able to use a summary to retell this. So if we think about that, someone wanted, but then so. What would we say for the someone part of that? We never learned her name, so if you're saying the old woman, you're right. The old woman wanted, what did she want? Or maybe what did she not want? Yeah. If you're saying the old woman wanted to not outlive any more of her friends, you are correct. The old woman did not want to outlive any more of her friends, but yeah, she started a friendship with a stray dog. The stray dog kept coming around, right? So far we have the old woman didn't want to outlive any more friends, but this shy brown puppy kept coming to her house every day. Then we need to think about what's important here because there's a lot of story that's important here. So we did the main character, what she wanted and what the problem is, but this is where we've really got to narrow it down. What's important? She didn't want to outlive any more friends, but this brown dog kept coming by. Then, yeah, one day it didn't show up and she was sad. Yeah, one day it didn't show up and she was sad. So this is where we tell the solution of the story. So she found it at the dog catcher's, but it needed a name. So she named it Lucky and kept him forever. So to put that together in a summary, we would say the old woman did not want to outlive any more friends, but this brown dog kept coming around. Then one day it didn't show up anymore and she felt sad. So she found it at the dog catcher's and named it Lucky and kept it forever. Do you see how that's a quick way of retelling the whole story so that someone who hasn't read it can understand what this story is about? Yeah. Now, that's one thing we need to do with a fiction story when we retell it, but we also need to tell the lesson of the story. This is where you've got to dig a little deeper in your thinking and into the story. Oftentimes, at that solution point in the story, the author will give us clues as to what the character is thinking or feeling. Whenever we're at that point in the story where the dog catcher says to the old lady, well, what's its name? Cynthia Rylant tells us, the old woman thought a moment. She thought of all the old dear friends with names whom she had outlived. She saw their smiling faces and remembered their lovely names, and she thought how lucky she had been to have known these friends. She thought what a lucky old woman she was. This is the point where our character is changing. And to determine the lesson of a story, you have to tune in to when the character's changing. She would not give that dog a name, even though for months and months and months and months and months, it came around and she loved it. She wouldn't give it a name. And now she does that thinking and she gives it a name. She realizes that she was lucky that she had those things to love. So now you can think of the lesson as, what kind of advice would you give to someone now that you know the experiences of the old woman? So the lesson of the story is to love and enjoy special people whenever you have them in your life, and not to worry about what's going to happen when they're gone. You don't worry about people leaving you. Just enjoy the time you have with people. So if we were going to summarize this story, let's recap. The old woman didn't want to outlive any more friends, but the brown puppy kept showing up at her house every day. Then one day it didn't show up, and she went to the dog catcher. And so she gave it a name, Lucky, and kept it with her forever. The lesson in the story is to enjoy your time with your family and friends and your loved ones, not worry about the future. All right, that's how we do it. Go off, do that with your books. It's an important skill for you to be able to do. Whenever you have to summarize someone wanted but so then, whenever you have to tell the lesson, look for the point in the story where the character's thinking or feeling changes, and that will clue you in. All right, it's been a great year. Take care, kiddos. We'll see you next year. Bye-bye.